And welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Song. I am back after a week off. I had a little bit of a back injury, you could say. I don't know what happened exactly. I was just minding my own business at work, and suddenly my back decided that it did not want to cooperate. I could not move, had to go to a chiropractor, had to take a day off from work just to be able to rest and recuperate. But now I am back. I am ready. I am excited for the fact that the Miami Dolphins are now 6-2 for the first time since 2001, and they did so by defeating the New England Patriots. So Miami is now officially 2-0 against New England this year. It is always exciting to see when the AFC East rivals end up going down to what is now the best team in the AFC East. I don't care what anybody says about Buffalo. I don't care what anybody tells me about how Buffalo beat Miami. I have a whole lot of things to say about who beat who in the NFL as of recently, and quite frankly, I'm going to get into all of that in just a few moments, and believe me, I have some things that I would like to say. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the recently renewed NBA, or the NFL, or the MLB, or the NHL, one of each league, one of a bunch of different leagues, all from the same league. It is up to you to decide how you want to play it. All you have to do is just choose whether your chosen player will have more or less than whatever PrizePicks projects their stat to be. So if Tua Tagovailoa has an over or under on 1.5 touchdown passes, it might be a safe bet to go ahead and pick the over, because he's always good for at least 1 touchdown per game, and it's always a really good safe bet if to think that he's going to score at least 2, because this Miami Dolphins offense, man, has been something to watch. So once again, all you have to do is just use the promo code FIVE, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. They have discounts going for basketball players right now, so check out the NBA props. Go ahead and make sure that you check out Flex Fridays, which they recently upgraded, so now you don't only have to pick players that are playing on Friday, now you can pick them for any day in the next few days. So they really made it a whole lot easier for you to win. So what kind of excuse do you have to not sign up at this point when they're literally giving you $100 of their dollars for you to play with when you use that promo code 5 and deposit your $100? So don't delay, go to prizepicks.com, do that deposit, and get started winning today. Speaking of winning, let's talk about the Miami Dolphins again, shall we? So Miami is now officially 6-2, like I mentioned. Not since 2001 have this Miami Dolphins franchise been this successful. So that means, just for the sake of clarity, I was 8 years old the last time the Miami Dolphins were this good. I am now 30. It has been a very long time, 22 years, since we could look at this Miami Dolphins squad and say, you know what, you guys are legitimately a really good football team. At the very least, there is no way you can deny this anymore at this point. They are at least a top 3 football team. And the reason I say top 3 is because if you want to go ahead and put the San Francisco 49ers in first place, okay, sure, you can do that. You can go ahead and put the Philadelphia Eagles at number 2 if you would like as well. But where am I putting the Kansas City Chiefs? Right now, folks, I am putting the Kansas City Chiefs right below the Miami Dolphins. They are number 4 in my list of teams right now. Whereas Buffalo, probably somewhere near 6 or 7 at this point, because the Buffalo Bills are on a downward spiral. Because here's the thing about the Miami Dolphins and all these narratives that are coming out recently about who beats who and whether the Dolphins are good enough to be considered in this particular list of teams, this top 5 NFL power ranking. Here's the thing. We're talking about the fact that the Miami Dolphins have not actually beaten any true contenders as of yet. That the only teams that the Miami Dolphins have managed to claim victory against have been bad football teams. They beat down the Carolina Panthers. They beat down the New York Giants. They took down the New England Patriots twice, and everybody says the New England Patriots are a rotten football team. Okay, you can do all that. And by the way, the Miami Dolphins put up 70. Nobody's ever going to forget that. Put up 70 against a struggling Denver Broncos squad. So obviously, you take all of these wins the Miami Dolphins have accumulated, and the only team that you can kind of squint and say, well, that's a good football team, would be the Los Angeles Chargers. But even they are having their issues right now. Los Angeles Chargers, as of right now, according to what I'm reading by the standards here, they are currently sitting at 2-4, 4th in the AFC West. So they are literally the worst team in their division. Interesting. So does that mean the Los Angeles Chargers are also not a good football team? They were a good football team. They were projected to be a good football team. Everybody thought they were a good football team. Even after they lost to the Miami Dolphins, nobody was looking at the Chargers and saying, oh, well, they must be a bad football team because the Miami Dolphins beat them. Now their record is 2-4, so suddenly the narrative is shifting. So the only teams that the Dolphins have played that are actually good football teams in the eyes of those who quote-unquote matter would be the Buffalo Bills, who they lost against, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who they also lost against. But since I was off that week, I wasn't able to discuss the frustration that came my way from the 10 penalties called on Miami with a big fat goose egg for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's a whole different discussion, and I'm not going to get into that right now because what's done is done. Miami lost. It's over. Moving on to the next topic. And this is what I would like to talk about right now, because we're talking about the Miami Dolphins and we're saying, well, we have to hold them to a higher standard. Beating up on bad football teams does not mean you are a good football team. It just means that you are better than the bad football teams, which is not a very high standard. But there is this thing about just playing the teams on your schedule. What can you do? You can't choose who your opponents are every single week. It is what it is. So Miami faced off against two really good football teams. Buffalo, in Buffalo, by the way, lost, and lost badly. Yeah, okay. Buffalo usually plays the Miami Dolphins really strong. Meanwhile, Buffalo has also lost, and I should emphasize this, they have lost to the New York Jets, which was led by Zach Wilson, not Aaron Rodgers, because after 4 snaps, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, and he was done. We are seeing if Aaron Rodgers is going to try to pull off a miracle and come back. I don't think that he will, at least not this season. And they also lost, as of a couple weeks ago, to, guess who? The New England Patriots. They lost to New England, and they almost lost to the Giants if not for a missed pass interference call. So now we're saying the if game. Oh, well, they almost lost to the Giants. That doesn't count. Okay, the Dolphins beat down the Giants. The Dolphins never got to the point where it looked like they might lose to the Giants. So I don't know what your point is. What about New England? Miami just beat down New England, 31-17. Okay, so once again, we're looking at this and saying, well, how did the Patriots end up beating the Buffalo Bills if the Buffalo Bills are supposedly this unstoppable juggernaut and the fan favorite for all the media analysts out there? This is how the game works, folks. This is how the game works. Depending on who you like and who you decide you want to give defense to, we are going to move the goalposts. The Dolphins need to directly beat a top 3 team in order to be considered true contenders, right? Well, they're going to get their opportunity when they go and face the Kansas City Chiefs in Germany. But here's the funny thing, and this is why I go ahead and I mention that Kansas City is below Miami for me right now. There's a whole bunch of different reasons. The first one, first and foremost, is, remember that team that I just mentioned a little bit earlier? The Dolphins put up 70 points against the Denver Broncos, the struggling Denver Broncos who are struggling just to buy a win. Well, the Denver Broncos found themselves a little bit of a winning streak lately. Going into the bye week, they defeated a team that most people would consider a Super Bowl contender. I mean, heck, they won the Super Bowl last year. You would think that that would be good enough, right? The Denver Broncos defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. And by the way, they did not just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They stopped the Kansas City Chiefs from scoring a single touchdown. Not a single touchdown. Patrick Mahomes did not score a touchdown in that game. Think about that for a second. Patrick Mahomes, the one that people are already crowning the new greatest of all time. Tom Brady still has that title for most people, but there are a lot of people who are looking at Patrick Mahomes and saying, by the time his career is over, he's going to make Tom Brady look pedestrian. That he is not, that Patrick Mahomes is so far and away above everybody else in the NFL that nobody comes even close. There's a show that's on Fox Sports. It's called First Things First, starring Nick Wright, Chris Broussard, and they have this thing that's called Mahomes Mountain. They do this segment once a week, and they basically rank all the quarterbacks in the NFL, and for some reason they have Caleb Williams on there from college, just because, I guess, because they're looking at him like he's going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, I guess. So they have this thing. It's Mahomes Mountain, right? And by name, Mahomes Mountain basically indicates, oh, this is the standard that we set all NFL quarterbacks to. Mahomes is the guy. So by just him being there by itself, the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the best teams in football. And yet they could not score a single touchdown against the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, who again, I remind you, gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. What happened there exactly? So are we going to go ahead and say that the Kansas City Chiefs are not a true Super Bowl contender? Of course not. That would be utter insanity to suggest. But here's the thing, and this is where I get frustrated. We're talking about the Miami Dolphins being frauds because the only teams that they've beaten have been teams with losing records, right? Okay, fine. They have losing records. But the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills and the Philadelphia Eagles, they're these teams that are considered far and above somehow still the Miami Dolphins. They are losing to teams who they are monumentally better than. They have no business losing to teams like the Patriots, like the Jets, like the Broncos. And yet here they are. Kansas City just lost to Denver. They couldn't score a touchdown against Denver. So now they're going to go head-to-head against the Dolphins on this upcoming Sunday morning. And if the Chiefs win, does that negate the fact that they lost to the Broncos? Does Miami losing to Kansas City prove that the Chiefs are far and away the better football team? I honestly am getting tired of this. I think what's really happening here is that when good football teams face each other, there is a distinct possibility that one team or the other could just potentially come out on top. The Miami Dolphins lost to the Eagles. The Eagles are a Super Bowl contending type of football team. And they have lost to teams that they have no business losing to. The Kansas City Chiefs are Super Bowl champions. They are reigning Super Bowl champions trying to regain their title. And they have lost to teams that they have no business losing to. The only two teams that Miami has lost to thus far have been two teams that people are considering playoff contenders, if not Super Bowl contenders. So we're looking at this team, and we have to admit to ourselves that this is a strong football team. Just because the Dolphins haven't beaten a team that is considered a top NFL football team as of yet, does not necessarily mean that they are not a good football team. We need to get away from that as quickly as we can. We need to stop talking about them like they don't have what it takes. They absolutely have what it takes to win the Super Bowl. They have all of this talent. They have all of these, and they have all these players, which, by the way, Jalen Ramsey coming back, facing against the New England Patriots, his first game back. What is the first thing he does? He intercepts Mac Jones. I knew that Jalen Ramsey was going to be a great addition to the defense. Obviously, he's Jalen Ramsey, for God's sakes. I did not expect him to get an interception. He almost had a pick six. I did not expect him to be that good right out the gate. And now, when the Miami Dolphins go to Germany and they face off against Kansas City, there is a very distinct possibility that they will not only have Jalen Ramsey, they're going to have Xavier Howard back, who the Dolphins were playing very carefully with. He could have gone against New England. He really could have. But Mike McDaniel has taken it upon himself to protect the players from themselves and make sure that they're ready to go in the long term, which I understand. Did the Dolphins need Xavier Howard against the New England Patriots? No. Did they need Javon Holland against the New England Patriots? No. And he was also inactive. Did the Miami Dolphins need Connor Williams to defeat the New England Patriots? No. And mind you, that was even after injuries to Kendall Lamb, who did come back later. Injuries to Robert Hunt, which, by the way, we're going to be keeping an eye on that very carefully. Hopefully it's not as bad as we thought because he didn't come back into the game, but there were reports that Robert Hunt was seen on the sidelines just talking to people, no crutches, no ice packs, no braces or anything like that. So hopefully Robert Hunt is going to be ready to go for this upcoming Sunday. The only one who was left that was a starter was Austin Jackson. And still, Dolphins were able to go up 2 scores against New England. These Dolphins are so talented. They absolutely can beat anybody in this league. Anybody. There is no team that the Dolphins can't find a way to get a victory against. And sometimes they lose. But they've only lost twice. This is a really good football team, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate that we have raised the standards for what we expect from these Dolphins. I can appreciate that we no longer look at this team and say, we're just glad that we got a win. We're so lucky that we were able to defeat this team that we faced today. We were so lucky that we were able to beat the Chargers. No, there's none of that. Not anymore. And it's good that we have this new standard. What is not good is when we look at this team and say, oh, well, you're 6-2, that's great and all, but you could have been 7-1. You could have been 8-0. You could have done this. Let's not do that, okay? The Kansas City Chiefs fans out there who are able to, week in and week out, look at such an incredible player in Patrick Mahomes are now looking at the Chiefs and saying, oh, well, the regular season is getting us all grouchy because we're not winning these games that we should be winning. I am sure that Chiefs fans are very upset and very bummed over the fact that they lost to the Denver Broncos. But do you think for even a second that they are stressing the idea that the Chiefs might not make the playoffs and might not be in contention for a Super Bowl? No. They are just going to lick their wounds, say, okay, that Sunday sucked, bring on the next opponent. They are looking at us, the Miami Dolphins, and saying, yep, they're a tough opponent, but we'll be able to take them down because we have Patrick Mahomes. That is the level of confidence and the level of enjoyment that they can get out of their football team because they just know that their team is good. We, as Dolphins fans, I understand we have been a bad football team for so long that it's taking us a little bit of a while to get to where Chiefs fans are. Chiefs fans are so confident in their team, in spite of the fact that their wide receivers are subpar, in spite of the fact that even if the Chiefs can't actually get a rhythm going because of all the drops that they've been going through, all the whatever, they still have faith in their quarterback. They still have faith in their head coach. They still have faith that their team is more than good enough to repeat another Super Bowl. They're just having fun. Every Sunday, they sit down on their couch or they go to the stadium or they go wherever they go to watch the game and they just sit back and enjoy the show. Because they know that when the regular season is over and done with, they will be in the playoffs and they will be causing problems for whoever they face in the playoffs. In fact, I am still convinced that they are more than happy to go ahead and chalk themselves in as the number 1 seed in the AFC. Mind you, as Dolphins fans, we should be starting to look at that as a possibility. Because if the Dolphins can steal a win in Germany and beat the Kansas City Chiefs head-to-head, that would give us a very distinct advantage that we would be able to hold over them once the Miami Dolphins end the regular season. Because there's a lot of teams coming up that the Dolphins could easily claim victory against. The Tennessee Titans, the Washington Commanders are coming up. And even the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are good again, folks. The Cowboys, they're up and down, but they're beatable. There's a whole bunch of teams. The Raiders, for God's sake, the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't even know who their quarterback is at this point. Is it Jimmy Garoppolo? Is he back? Or even if he is back, is he going to still be there? Or is he end up going to get hurt again when the Dolphins face off against him? Because it seems like every time Jimmy Garoppolo goes up against the Dolphins, somehow something horrible happens to him and he loses for the rest of the season. So I am looking at this team and I am saying it's time to enjoy ourselves. If the Dolphins end up losing a game, yes, we'll be bummed, we'll be upset, we'll be, this team, they could have won this game. But you know what? I am not convinced for even a second that there is a chance the Miami Dolphins might not make the playoffs. Not one moment am I convinced that something might happen with this team, with this squad, and they might not make the playoffs. The only thing that can happen, and knock on wood, it hasn't happened yet, the only thing that could derail this season at this point would be if something happens to Tua Tagovailoa. But that is the same thing that could derail any team's season. Do you think that if something happens to Patrick Mahomes, that the Chiefs won't suddenly find themselves sweating a little bit? As much as I've talked about how the Chiefs fans out there are just having a good time and watching their quarterback go out there and do amazing things every single week, if anything ever happened to him, the Chiefs would suddenly be a lot more nervous about their status in the AFC. If anything happened to Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills, if anything ever happened to Justin Herbert for the Chargers, if anything ever happened to any of these other teams with a star starting quarterback, do you think if something happens to Lamar Jackson that Tyler Huntley's just going to be able to walk in there and pick up where he left off? There is going to be some drop-off It is guaranteed. Kirk Cousins has just torn his Achilles. He's not coming back this season. So what are the Vikings going to do now? They are in serious trouble, and so are all these other teams. The only one that I can argue that they might have gotten an upgrade is the Tennessee Titans, because Will Levis went ahead and just went ballistic last week, and Ryan Tannehill might not get his starting job back. Oh, the irony of it all. This Miami Dolphins team is a good football team, regardless of whoever their opponents are. You can only play the teams on your schedule. And when we talk about these Miami Dolphins, we are going to look at this team and say, this is a bad football team. You should beat them. And they have, every single time. The only teams they haven't beaten are the teams that are on an even playing field with them. Meanwhile, those same teams that we lost to have lost to teams they have no business losing to for any reason. So, whenever we talk about who the Dolphins' opponents are, think about that for a second and just remember that any given Sunday, something can happen. So far, the Dolphins have not lost to an opponent that they were supposed to beat. While these other teams that we're crowning as the next Super Bowl champions before it even begins, they've already lost to teams that looks like they should have absolutely scored 40 against and beat them down into the ground. Remember that, folks. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back on Wednesday for another episode of Fins Nation. On Tuesday at 7:30 p.m., we are going to have Pulse of Fins Nation. We will be live, and we will be discussing with all of you whatever topics you want to throw into. Make sure you use that super chat, folks. That's how you end up getting us to change topics, if you will. So it always helps us out when you throw one out there, and that way we'll be able to continue to do what we do here. As for the sponsor, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up over at PrizePicks.com. It is really the best place for you to go for your daily fantasy needs because they make it so easy to win. How could you not want to sign up? Again, promo code 5, FIVE, PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code and get started winning today. We will see you all Wednesday for another episode of Fins Nation.